here. Now, I'm not a person to stand at a mic. You might find me wandering out there. And I think my voice is big enough, so.
Stay in front of the camera.
Okay, I just got my directions. Thank you, Andy. I forgot. Okay, so I'm going to put this right here. Again, I'm Joanne Chesley. I'm running for North Carolina House of Representatives, District 83. And as the new map has it, following gerrymandering, District 83 is Northwest Cabarrus County and Southwest Rowan County. So primarily that's Kannapolis, China Grove, and Landis. And Kannapolis, of course, includes Enochville. All right, so that's the area. I'm going to start just telling you just a little bit about me, and then I'm going to talk about two of the areas that matter the most to me. I have a hard time saying that because there are so many issues, and we know that. If you watched the State of the Union address the other night, you saw how President Biden laid them all out, and it's kind of hard to say what's more important to you when you feel for all of these. That's how I feel, that immigration is extremely important to me. LGBTQ rights extremely important to me. Voting rights extremely important to me. But today, the two that I am going to talk about clearly represent, the first one clearly represents where I've placed my emphasis over the years, and that's on education. And then I'm also going to talk about abortion. And I think particularly in this month, celebrating women and their accomplishments to this country and to this world, I think giving emphasis to that important reproductive freedom issue is something that we need to do. So I'll start by telling you just a little bit about me. And I'm really, really uncomfortable standing in this one spot, Andy. This is just not what I do. For years as a principal, I encourage my teachers to move through the classroom and so that kids feel connected to you. But now I've got to stand in this one spot. Anyway, I grew up in Charles County, Southern Maryland. I was born in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., but grew up in Southern Maryland, rural. I went to a small Catholic school, Archbishop Neal School, from 1st to 12th grade in the same building, 500 students. My family was the first Black family to integrate that school. Well, actually, the two went in pretty much together, the Chesleys and the Grays. My mother was the person who made sure that Black kids could ride the school buses in Charles County, could ride what were segregated buses, because of course Black kids were going to Black schools and white kids were going to white schools. Well, now here's the Catholic school that anybody could go, but the Catholic school used public school buses, so that meant we didn't have transportation to get to the Catholic school. So my mother said, okay, enough's enough. Because for the first year of my older sister going there, my sister's 2 years older, there was this wonderful woman in the community. She was active in the NAACP, and that's the kind of thing the NAACP did then and still does. They make sure that these things happen by taking personal responsibility. So this woman named Mrs. Veronica Freeman, everybody in the county knew Miss B. Freeman. She picked my sister up for school every day the first year of school. Okay, because we only had the one car in the family. My dad took that car into Washington, D.C., which is a 45-mile drive each way from where we lived. So there was no other way for Phyllis to get to school. But after that year, then my mother proceeded to get people in the county to sign a petition, and my dad drove her to Annapolis, Maryland, to the governor's office, because he did grant her that meeting, to the governor's office with this letter and petition. And from then on, Black kids were able to ride the public school buses. I watched my grandmother very active in the NAACP through all the years, even with her heart condition. And it resonated with me even as a little kid to see how she just, even the little things like going into this very cold building and stoking the fire, whether it was coal or wood, I don't remember that, but she had to start the fire and keep it going all through the evening while the meeting was going on. And we're kids, we're sitting there like, when is this thing going to be over? But they were doing very, very important work. My grandmother was the one who made sure that anybody in the county who wanted to go to hear Martin Luther King give his I Have a Dream speech would get on that bus. And so she coordinated that. But on the day of the event, and because of her heart condition too, she didn't go to the event. She stayed home to take care of us, her grandkids. And my mother went to hear Martin Luther King deliver the famous speech. And so this spirit of fighting and standing up for what's right is just in my blood. It's just in me. I've watched it through the years, and I've participated in it through the years. As a 14-year-old, I joined the NAACP youth group, and the same kids with whom I went to school, the Catholic school, could sit on the swiveling stools at the Metro drugstore, which was very much like Woolworth's in Greensboro, okay, a lunch counter as we called it in the day, right? So I could go in there and see my friends sitting there and sharing burgers and milkshakes. My sisters and I had to order and stand back and wait for it to be handed to us and leave. We couldn't sit there. So I joined the NAACP, and one of the first things that our youth group did was to form a huge protest and work with the older people in the NAACP, and we ended that. And so we integrated that place in La Plata, Maryland. So this spirit has been with me for a long, long time. And actually, I would say it might have actually been planted from this little seed when I was 5. My mother, and she was really good at making us get in these talent shows. She was just like, oh, okay. And she would tell us what we're going to do. At the time, there were just 3 of us. I have 5 sisters, so 6 girls all total. But Phyllis had this awesome voice, so Phyllis would always sing. And then I was the orator. So I remember on this particular talent show, my mom, before the talent show, she took me to the public library, go in there and get a book of poetry and find a poem. Okay, I couldn't make up my mind. So we brought this book home, and we decided on a poem that I would deliver as a 5-year-old on this talent show. That poem has stayed with me all my life. All my life. That poem has guided my life. And it goes like this: I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And what I can do, I ought to do. And what I ought to do, by the grace of God, I will do. Great little piece of poetry, right? And it stayed with me. I feel like my behavior was guided by that all through my life. And then I have a favorite song. I won't sing the entire song, but well, Jeffrey gave me 15 minutes, and I still have other remarks to make. But it's written in my will. My kids know that at my funeral they have to have somebody to sing the song "I've Got to Be Me." But the favorite part in there is when they say, "I won't settle down nor settle for less, as long as there's a chance that I can have it all. I want to live, not merely survive. And I won't give up this dream of life that keeps me alive. I've got to be me, I've got to be free. The dreams that I see make me what I am." So those 2 pieces, thank you. Those 2 pieces just have been extremely meaningful to me. So now that you know just a little bit about me, I'm going to share with you some of, Andy, am I still in the right place here?
Should be.
I should be. So I think I might put this back on here. And so I don't have to hold it. So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about what I believe about education, and then I'll touch on my thoughts on this topic of abortion. Okay? If you ask me what I believe about abortion, I will tell you that I believe every single child in this state, every single child in this country deserves to have a sound basic education. But I really wish better for them. I believe all children should have an excellent education. And so when I'm asked by people who interview me for news columns and the like. I talk about excellence in education. We have downplayed education long enough in North Carolina. That's what has left us in the position of being 43rd in terms of teacher salaries and 49th for PPE, per pupil expenditures. Those are not good statistics. A sound education is one that will prepare a student to get a job, support themselves and a family. It's one that prepares them to take a test for employment and achieve reasonably good results. Getting a sound education means leaving high school understanding how to communicate orally and verbally in an effort to communicate your ideas and your needs to someone successfully. It means that you will understand basic math principles and be familiar with selected pieces of literature, be aware of where we are in the world, and maybe be familiar with plant and animal life. You'll know how to read a contract before signing it, upload documents, use email, read a contract, and some of the other basic things like that. An excellent education, however, is one that prepares a student to apply with confidence to any college or university, or to apply for employment to any corporation or organization in the United States, or in another country that's considered a world leader. An excellent education is one's best ticket to freedom. Freedom to follow your dreams, freedom to live where you want to live, freedom to work where you want to work, freedom to think and act out of a spirit of innovation and a desire to change the world. When we provide our students with an excellent education, we can rest more comfortably knowing that they will care for our world with competence and compassion. In North Carolina, we must refocus. For many years, we had what was considered a strong state school system, not without its challenges, but clearly regarded for the intention to address the needs of all children, once we made the effort to eradicate segregation. This has changed now. Now that the supermajority, the Republican supermajority, has stepped in and weakened our schools by taking $500 million, hear me? $500 million per year from the state public school fund to fund private schools. Now, I'm not talking about charter schools. They are not the same as private schools. Charter schools are public schools, and they deserve to be funded accordingly. The public school money should not be going to private schools. All the while, we wonder why there are so many schools deemed low performing. Right here in Rowan County, more than half of our schools have been deemed low performing over the years. And currently, the number is still about half. Low performing schools often have larger class sizes because they have fewer teachers than they need. Most teachers who are seeking employment tend to shy away from these schools. They fear the lack of support. They fear lack of resources, and the school's reputation of low performing doesn't set well with them. These schools often have a higher teacher attrition, which means their teachers do not stay more than 2 or 3 years, which also means that the school has a difficult time creating a culture of support and connection with the community. The parents in these schools, while they are hardworking, have little time to spend in the schools. They can't show up at lunchtime and help out in the classroom like parents who live in advantaged communities. Discipline is often a challenge in these schools, sometimes because the teachers and the parents have not had time to bond and figure out what makes for a successful school experience for that child. These schools have fewer resources, so even though they get the same PPE per pupil expenditure, that amount, let's say $11,000 here in North Carolina, it doesn't go very far because in these schools, many of the students are behind and that money goes toward remediation. And so the kids never really get caught up and money never gets optimized. Counties provide supplements to school budgets. In counties where household incomes are high and families live large, schools get more money. That doesn't happen in lower income communities because property taxes are lower. Families typically live in more simple housing, often apartments. In these communities, the property tax base is lower, so the county has less money to share with schools. The county supplements to schools make a real difference, which can clearly be seen if you compare Charlotte-Mecklenburg to Hope County or Wake County to Scotland County. Supplements provide teachers with an added $4,000 to $10,000 in salary, depending on what county you're talking about. That's significant, especially when we're talking about recruiting teachers or maintaining the teachers we have. They're going where the money is, and they have to. So when our legislators decide to take public school money to fund private schools, schools that are not even asked to account for their curriculum or for their teachers' certifications, handing over money that could be used to improve the education of all North Carolina school children. So I say this has to stop. Now, not all issues are as easily illustrated and rationalized as education. So on the issue of abortion and IVF, in vitro fertilization, I could explain my thoughts on abortion and if I believe it is okay with God, or if I think it is okay with the state of North Carolina, or whether or not I think Roe versus Wade was ever the right thing, or if it is what I would advise a woman who had just been raped by a relative. I could talk with you about IVF and whether I believe a frozen embryo in a petri dish is a person or not. But I won't. I won't go there because what I believe has nothing to do with what another woman must choose when she is faced with a critical decision about life, to be or not to be. So what I can offer you on the topic of abortion is this. I grew up in the church. I am still guided by my Christian beliefs, and I expect to do so for as long as God gives me breath. I learned somewhere around age 7, which is considered the age of reason, that God gave all of us a gift called free will. I can still see my teacher, Sister Janet, writing that term across the board in my religion class. She explained that this is the power to make your own choices and decisions, even after we have learned what God favors us to do. I learned that we are human and fallible. So, not like God, though we're made in God's image, as frail and fallible humans, we would not always do what God would want us to do because of our humanity. We are vulnerable and weak, needy, prideful, scornful, angry, impatient, impulsive, and susceptible to making mistakes. I learned that when we make errors in judgment, or we have been forced or coerced to act in a way that defies God's favor, it is then that we must use our free will to choose our best path forward. In the book of Luke, 7th chapter, 36 through 51st verses, we find that Jesus told the story of a woman who was scorned and banished by the town where she lived because she had committed sins of immorality. Now, the town never made an issue about the men who had the sex with her, but they did hold up this woman as the town sinner. Therefore, the townspeople were putting themselves in the position of judge, much like we see happening in the conservative general assemblies of today. They chose who they wanted to be the scapegoat, to be the poster child for fornication. She would be the martyr for all of those who had sinned as humans do, men and women. They did not look at their own transgressions and the resulting choices they made. They deflected, covering up what went on in their own households. They felt exonerated by choosing someone who would fall on the sword for them, to teach a lesson, to falsely lift themselves onto a pedestal of righteousness for political gain, much like what we see today. So as the parable goes, Jesus told the Pharisees to let the woman come inside the room where they were talking with him. They at first refused on the basis of her despicable reputation. Jesus quickly pointed out to them the error of their ways. He told a story of a person who owed taxes but did not have the money to pay, and one collector who forgave and allowed the man more time to pay his debts, and another collector who was going to take swift action to harm him because of the debt owed. Jesus asked, which one showed love? The Pharisees agreed it was the collector who forgave the man, who showed love. Jesus also brought to the attention of the Pharisees that they never offered him a drink of water or oil for his feet, for he had walked a long distance that day to meet with them. But that this woman, now sitting before them, did this immediately. Again, Jesus asked, who here has shown love? And they all agreed that it was the woman who showed love by using her own tears to wash the feet of Jesus, her own hair to dry the feet of Jesus, and her oil to soothe his dry, aching feet. So the Pharisees learned that despite sin, only God knows our hearts. We humans are not asked to make judgments about others. We are only asked to love. Just that. God only made 2 commandments: to love him and to love our neighbors, and leave the rest to God. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 to 5, we hear, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Morality cannot and should not be legislated.